we have all had time to digest the phrase Pistons forward Blake Griffin. Everyone's put out their statements just this morning. Griffin tweeted a heartfelt thank you to Clipper Nation. He promised he was ready to get to work in Detroit. It was all very polished. But let's be honest. This tweet, the eyes open Will Smith gif that Blake posted just after the trade yesterday, this is the more appropriate reaction. Because this was an eye-opening deal, starting with how it completely changes the direction of two franchises. For the Clippers, this is a way to reset the table without totally bottoming out. That first-round draft pick they got could be a lottery selection. Tobias Harris is a decent piece, so is Avery Bradley, even if he didn't excel in Detroit like he did in Boston. Perhaps most importantly, LA has shaken free of Griffin's enormous contract, which would have been scary even if you weren't talking about a guy who at 28 years old has already had at least 6 surgeries and hasn't been an all-star in 3 years. As for Detroit, well, the deal is easy to understand, even if for some of the team's fans it's hard to stomach. The Pistons need to fill their new building. Griffin is a big name. Stan Van Gundy needs to keep his job. Griffin is the kind of talent who could keep the Pistons, I don't know, in a playoff spot for years. Detroit just has to be willing to accept a huge ball of risk because even if Blake can suddenly stay healthy, he's not jumping over cars anymore. Maybe a mountain bike? I don't know, maybe. That's about it.
Come on.
But I do want to talk about Blake because he is now going to be the official cautionary tale for any other big-name free agent. Remember when the Clippers wooed Blake to re-sign just this past summer? They staged an entire fake jersey retirement ceremony at the arena, a live gospel choir singing as they actually raised his number to the rafters. And as Zach Lowe here reported, they told him he would be, quote, a Clipper for life, which was totally accurate if you consider for life to be 6 months, give or take. And look, Blake could have pushed for a no-trade clause. He was eligible for one. He had leverage, but he chose to use that leverage to get a 5th year on his deal instead. And there is certainly an argument that if at the end of things someone has to pay you nearly $200 million, things are working out just fine. No one is crying for Blake Griffin. However, in an era where we talk about, oh, players have so much more power now, it's also a very real thing to be reminded just how much of a say many of these guys often give up. Where they live, who they work for, how often they get to even be in the same state as their young children. In the wake of this trade, I would expect players who are eligible to get no-trade clauses this summer will be much more aggressive about pursuing them. Because being an NBA player is a position of immense privilege, but you still need to have your eyes wide open. Scotty, what was your reaction to this move? I know it came across your phone yesterday.
Well, I was pretty shocked. I felt like that, Blake was the guy that they were going to try to ride out as their superstar. But I think obviously this season he's been plagued with a lot of injuries, and he's not an all-star player anymore. So his value is definitely dropping, and it's dropping fast. And the fact that the Clippers are a 9th seed team right now, you see that they're not going anywhere. And Blake is making a lot of money. And the fact that you look at those options, you really realize why the Clippers decided to move him. And he's suffered a lot of injuries. So you got to think going forward that things are not going to be looking as good for him as it's been for him in the past.
Blake is a great player. Like, I still think he can be an all-star if he's healthy and he does a good year.
Certainly in the East, it's going to be easier.
Well, I think he would have been a borderline candidate in the West, I think, had he stayed healthy. He's a great player. All that said, I think this is a pretty simple deal for the Clippers. I think they just wanted to get off his contract. They just viewed him as such an injury risk. They saw $39 million in, 2022. I just think it was about what's the max value we can get for that contract now and bail out of it, and they got good value.
Okay, so here's my question to you, because guess who put out the deal for $39 million? They did. So do you think that they went through all this effort to re-sign him and the presentation and the wall of pictures and everything they did with the intention of, hey, if things don't work out really soon in just a few months, we'll at least have a trade asset? Or do you think they really believed when they signed him, hey, you're with us, you are our plan?
I think both those things can be true. I think when you get caught up in the moment, he is the most important homegrown player in the history of their franchise. I'm sure they wanted him to be a Clipper for life. But no, you'd have to be a moron to think they didn't sign this contract with the idea of hopefully we can trade this. Masai Ujiri famously did this with Nene, what seems like a million years ago, signed him and then traded him a few months later. We talk about how you can't lose players for nothing. You can't lose assets for nothing. I'm kind of shocked at how much they got for him, but they succeeded.
Well, Scotty, then as a player, if you hear that and you're one of these guys who is going to be up this summer, and by the way, not everyone's going to be eligible for no trade on this list, but there are big names up this summer. LeBron expected to be a free agent. Paul George is going to be a free agent. Chris Paul will be a free agent. Technically, KD will be a free agent. Melo could, exercise his option and be a free agent. What do you think as a player when you hear all this from a team and then they're like, oh, good, but we could get some stuff from you?
Well, I start to really understand where these players are coming from with the no trade clause. I hear their voices when they say loyalty, and it's not on both sides. So when you hear those things and then the player seems to get the black eye every time he makes a move, it just doesn't play out fair for both sides. And I think in this situation for Blake, he got blindsided, He wasn't expected to get traded. He has a beautiful girlfriend here in California that he's going to have to figure that relationship out. But, for a player like Blake, like Zach said, he still has a lot of upside to his game. So there's no reason for him to be down about this trade. Here's an opportunity again to go in the East and be an all-star again. But he has to get healthy and start to deal with himself before he can carry a team again.
And I know not everyone is as into the weather as a factor as I clearly am, but he did wake up in 82 degrees in LA yesterday. The high today in Detroit is going to be 24. As Giannis Antetokounmpo said when someone asked him about the trade last night, Blake better buy a jacket. As first reported by Candace Buckner of the Washington Post, John Wall will undergo a knee procedure tomorrow. This knocks him out of All-Star. He will be off the court for 6 or 8 weeks for the Wizards. Wall initially banged his knee early in the season against the Mavericks. He's been dealing with it ever since. He's been trying a few different treatments. He wanted to stay on the court, but they just decided to clean it up now, so he'll be ready for the playoffs. Scotty, how big a hit is this going to be for Washington?
Well, I think it's a huge hit. You got Blake Griffin coming over now with the Pistons. They're going to be a little hungry, so they may get off to a good start. And I think it's going to hurt them. I think they're going to slide a little bit come playoffs. And I expect some teams like Milwaukee, those teams to kind of move up. And I think losing John Wall really hurts this team because he is their leader, and he's the guy that I think makes them go.
This is actually not unrelated to the Blake Griffin trade because, John Wall, this is a lot of knee issues for John Wall now. And he signed to that Supermax contract over the summer. You know how much money John Wall's going to make in 2021?
How much money, Zach?
$45 million when he's 32 years old.
Well deserved. Well deserved.
This is why. I'm not saying it. No, John Wall is great. I'm like, I look at my All-NBA votes and all that. I'm a big John Wall fan. I'm just saying that downside is why the Clippers traded Blake Griffin.
Oh, yeah, I'm not sure I would put it in the Blake Griffin category. This is a knee cleanup. This is not Blake Griffin.
This is not his first. This is not his first knee cleanup of the year.
I would consider this more maintenance than Blake ripped his MCL earlier this year. So we're talking about a difference in severity of injury.
Fair.
But yes, look, a lot of these players, by the time they get to this level, they've had some issues, and John is certainly one of them.
Wizards are 6-6 without him so far this year.